Should Helldivers have classes? This is actually a question that was asked pretty early on in the game, and the devs said no. But now that Space Marine 2 is coming out and the Starship Trooper game coming out in about 2 months, inevitably both of these games are going to draw a lot of comparisons to Helldivers 2, and people are going to ask that question again of why doesn't Helldivers 2 have classes, and should it? And even though most of the community says no, and the devs themselves say no, I'm going to take a different stance here and say yes, with a caveat or a maybe. Classes are beneficial in a lot of different ways. The most obvious one is that it makes it obvious to everyone what role you're going to play. If I join a new Dungeons and Dragons table, and the table says, okay, well, we have a warlock, we have a sorcerer, and we have a wizard, I know what those classes can do, all magic based, and it allows me to make a decision on what I want to do. Now, people may disagree on what I want to do is going to be helpful or not. I could say, well, I'm going to make a wizard too because we're going to go for an all magic theme. Or you could make the sensible choice and say, okay, well, I need to be a frontliner like a paladin or a barbarian or some sort of tank. And both those options do have their validity, but being able to quickly identify what someone is going to do or what they're capable of is very important. And the devs agree on that point because they've said that they don't want us to be able to transmogrify or change our armor in such a way that when you look at someone's armor, you can't tell what their armor is. Most famously, for a while, we had the meme about bacon-flavored apples for that exact reason. They said, well, we don't want someone to look at armor that's extra grenades and not know that that is extra grenades. And as I said, there's going to be inevitable comparisons, so let me be the first one to compare Starship Troopers to Helldivers 2. In Starship Troopers, they have the Sniper class. It's very obvious what the Sniper class is going to do. That class is going to sit at a longer range and pick off high-value targets. Then you have everyone's least favorite, the Medic, who hopefully will administer medicine and help save the team. Very easy to identify, very intuitive. So why doesn't Helldivers do this? The devs have made it very clear, post after post on the Discord, on the blog, on the community, all over, that they don't want us bringing the same loadout time after time after time again. That's the same reason even if we don't have classes, they don't have a default loadout or the ability to set default loadout 1, default loadout 2, or create your own custom classes. Because they don't like the meta. They want players to be able to come to each experience and say, okay, I see my teammates are doing this, or we're planning on doing this, so we should bring these stratagems, or I want to try something different and I want to bring these stratagems. And in theory, that works great, and I love that, and I don't want that to change. So why did I say that I want classes? Well, I want two different things. I want classes and I want roles. I think it's very easy to forget that not every player is a level 10, top tier, 1,000 hours player. There are people who are still trying to understand the stratagems, understand basic strategies. This isn't a get good or they're so bad or they're so awful at the game. It's simply a fact. Not everyone has 1,000 hours to invest in the game. Not everyone is making content every single day for it and going out and playing the game over and over and over again. So I think having some default classes for people who are still trying to understand the game could be very helpful to guide on how they should grab their stratagems. Showing combinations like, here's the machine gun and the supply pack so that you have a lot more ammo. Or here's a sniper rifle and a jump pack so that you have a lot more mobility and can stay at that range. These don't have to be super meta competitive builds, but rather a jumping off point for someone to see, okay, I see, this heavy armor makes me slow, but combining a sniper rifle with a jump pack gives me a little bit more mobility. Or combining the light armor with an SMG and a railgun and a jetpack gives me the ability to be a scout. I think that's a really intuitive way to help introduce people to some tactics and some ideas for how to combine their stuff. But that's not helpful for the later game, because obviously everyone wants to bring what they want to bring, especially when you're on level 10. You definitely need to coordinate to some degree how you're dealing with things. I can't tell you how many level 10s I've seen start to fall apart because everyone brings anti-chaff and no one brings anything to deal with chargers or behemoths or bile titans. Or vice versa, where everyone's bringing in recoilless rifles but not a single person brought in a machine gun or an orbital gas strike or anything to deal with the chaff. And that's where I think, more importantly than classes, I would like to see them add classes in the sense of like a role. Going to my favorite example, World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, you can assign roles. in raids and dungeons and different things. So you can clearly see that person's role is tank. They are going to be taking the damage. That person's role is DPS. They're going to be dealing the damage. That person's role is healer. They're going to be healing. It's very simple, very intuitive, and you can see it at a glance. Issue arises in Helldivers 2, especially if you're just playing with randoms and you don't have a lot of communication, no one's using their mics, which I believe is the experience for a lot of people. They just quick play, jump in, no mics, and you're just going in. Even if you see, everyone's bringing anti-tank, so I'm going to bring something anti-chaff, you don't really know what that person's role is, what they're going to do. If I see someone bringing 2 different turrets or sentries, I'm going to think, they're going to sit back and they're going to bring in the sentries and they're going to be anti-chaff and they're going to clear out, big nests. When in reality, that might be a solo player who plans to run off away from everyone else and just do objectives or do their own thing. Same problem is if someone brings anti-tank, you're like, I don't need to bring any anti-tank because they're going to be the ones taking out the big threats. And then you find out that they want to play alone and now you have no way to take out the threats when they're on you. Which is why a lot of people try and build these builds where all they can do is everything. They're this jack of all trades. Because they don't want to be caught in a situation where they're overwhelmed by chaff. They don't want to be caught in a situation where they don't have a way to deal with chargers. And they don't want to spend 10 hours kiting a Bile Titan, which means that their kit has to include everything. Which then inevitably leads to the meta and people complaining that things are stale, where they're bringing the same loadout, even though the devs said they didn't want people to do that. That's what ends up happening because they find the way to handle everything because they can't reliably rely on the randoms in their games. And while a solution of classes or roles may not fix that, I think it's a step in the right direction. So imagine if when you're joining a game, they're already in the game, you can see, in addition to their stratagems and their gear, you can see a role that they've selected for themselves. Things like solo player. I don't know if I'm going to depend on that person because they mark themselves as solo. They're going to be going off on their own. You see someone mark themselves as chaff clearer or light armor or something of that nature to show that they're going to take out all the little guys. You could say, maybe I'll bring some anti-tank and I'll pair up with them. You join a game and you see that there's 3 players and they all have something like destruction or chaos or mayhem. You say, they're going to go for as many fights as possible, so I need to bring a loadout that's going to allow me to sit in these fights for long periods of time because these guys are in it to destroy as much as possible. You see a guy with a sniper rifle or a railgun and scout or sniper or something that says, that person's going to hang back a little bit. They're going to take out those high value targets. I'm going to select something that'll complement that, maybe something to protect them, maybe a drone and a machine gun to keep the stuff off of them. You see a guy who's dedicated his role or class to some form of objective completer. He's bringing sentries or jetpacks, things that allow him to get in, do the objective, and get out. I'm going to stick with that guy. I'm going to bring something that's going to help defend him. Now, obviously, all this could be solved with a microphone, but I've played, 300 hours now, so not the most, but I've maybe seen a microphone in 10% of my games, if that. So clearly the preference is not to use microphones. We need some other way to communicate that general strategy on what we want to do. Or if you're joining a game halfway through, you're the reinforcements, you kind of need to know, you're bringing all this, but how are you guys working together? What are you doing with this? What holes need to be filled? And I think if we can avoid having to fill these holes as much, we can maybe start to move away from a meta or this jack of all trades thought where, I need to bring everything just in case someone else isn't doing what I think they're going to do, or they want to play a different way than I want to play. Avoiding that, I think, would really benefit the community and the game as a whole. And while it's not quite the same as classes, it does kind of invite the same ideas, which is why I say I do kind of want classes. Again, I want them for the new players, something to kind of see the synergies and some ideas. But more importantly, I want to be able to look at a glance of what roles everyone is filling so I know when I'm coming into a game, what role I need to fill to make a well-balanced experience that's going to be fun. People have made it clear that a lot of the fun comes from this game when everything goes well and you feel strong. And a lot of the unfun stuff comes in when you're overwhelmed and don't feel like you can handle everything. And in my opinion, a lot of those times where you don't feel like you can handle things is because things are getting out of control because people are all trying to cover every single role and they're failing at it. Whereas if we were more coordinated and filled our roles that we chose, not only could we have fun doing that, but we would have more successful missions and thus more fun. And obviously, with any implementation, there's going to be flaws, right? Someone can select that they prefer to go solo and then spend the entire time with you. They can select sniper and go running into the middle of it. There will be those flaws with any system, but I don't think it's a good choice for us to say, well, there will be flaws with it, so we shouldn't do anything. We should continue to press forward and then find ways to mitigate those flaws. So what do you think? If you could tag yourself with a class or a role so other people could see it, what would you classify yourself as? What is your role when you're helldiving? Leave a comment down below, and as always, have a blessed day.